Why the narcissist can't recover after betraying super empath? There is something deeply misunderstood about what happens when a narcissist betrays a super empath, and most people assume the narcissist simply moves on unaffected, but that assumption could not be further from the truth. Because what looks like confidence on the surface often hides a psychological collapse happening quietly beneath it. You see, a super empath is not just someone who loves deeply, but someone who sees deeply. And that combination creates a bond that is incredibly rare and incredibly dangerous for a narcissist to lose. When a narcissist first encounters a super empath, they feel something they rarely experience, which is a sense of being understood without having to perform or manipulate constantly. And for a brief moment, this feels like relief. It feels like safety. It feels like home in a way they don't fully understand. But here's where everything begins to unravel. Because a narcissist is wired to control, not to connect, and the depth of a super empath's emotional awareness slowly becomes threatening instead of comforting. The more seen they feel, the more exposed they become, and exposure is something they cannot tolerate for long. So what do? They betray. They lie, they cheat, they manipulate, or they emotionally withdraw, not because the super empath wasn't enough, but because the connection became too real for them to maintain control over. And in that moment of betrayal, they believe they are regaining power. They believe they are escaping vulnerability. They believe they are protecting themselves. But what they don't realize is that they are destroying the one connection that could have actually grounded them. Because a super empath does something that very few people ever do. They don't just love the narcissist's mask, they see through it and still choose to stay, at least for a while. And when that kind of person finally walks away, something shifts permanently. At first, the narcissist may feel relief. They may feel free. They may even feel superior, telling themselves that they won the situation. But that phase never lasts, because over time, the absence of the super empath begins to feel different from every other loss they've experienced. It doesn't feel replaceable. It doesn't feel superficial. It feels like something essential is missing. And this is where the real damage begins, because narcissists rely heavily on external validation to maintain their sense of self, but the validation they receive from others is usually shallow and temporary. Compliments, attention, admiration, these things give them quick boosts, but they don't provide stability. The super empath, however, gave them something deeper. They gave them emotional reflection. They gave them understanding. They gave them a sense of being known. And once that is gone, everything else starts to feel empty by comparison. No matter how many new people enter their life, none of them feel the same. None of them see them the same way. None of them connect on that level. And this creates a kind of psychological withdrawal. They may try to distract themselves with new relationships, new attention, or new sources of validation, but nothing fills that specific void. Because the super empath wasn't just another supply. They were a mirror. And now that mirror is gone. Worse than that, the memory of that mirror remains. They remember how they were seen. They remember how they were understood. They remember how they were accepted despite their flaws. And that memory becomes haunting. Because now, every new interaction feels incomplete. Every new connection feels surface level. And deep down, they know why. They know they destroyed the one connection that had depth. But here's the part that makes recovery almost impossible. A narcissist struggles with accountability. And without accountability, there is no real growth. They cannot fully admit that they caused the loss, because doing so would shatter their self-image. So they live in a contradiction. Part of them knows what they lost. Part of them knows it was their fault. But another part of them refuses to accept it. And this internal conflict creates emotional instability. They may try to rewrite the story, convincing themselves that the super empath was too emotional or too demanding, but those explanations never fully satisfy them. Because deep down, they know the truth. And the truth is that they lost someone who saw them beyond their mask, and instead of embracing that, they chose to destroy it. That realization doesn't fade easily. It lingers in quiet moments. It shows up when they are alone. It creeps in when their distractions stop working. And unlike the super empath who eventually heals and grows stronger, the narcissist often remains stuck in the same patterns, repeating the same cycles, making the same mistakes, losing the same kind of connections. but never quite finding what they lost. Because what they lost was not just a person. They lost a rare experience of being truly seen and still being accepted. And for someone who has spent their entire life hiding behind a mask, that is not something they can easily replace. So while it may look like they moved on, while it may seem like they are doing just fine, the reality is much more complicated. Because deep down, there is a part of them that knows they crossed a line they can't uncross. And that is why, in many cases, the narcissist never truly recovers after betraying a super empath.